Welcome, Cossack. So you want to know more about the Cobra Unit? Okay, but I must warn you, there are spoilers ahead. If you haven't played the games, you might want to save this video for a later date, but if that's not a problem for you, let's continue. In late 1942, the Cobra Unit was formed to break the siege of Stalingrad by Nazi Germany. Pooling their resources, the Allied think tank known only as the Philosophers were able to recruit and fund an elite team of superhuman soldiers to win the war. That unit was tasked to carry out the most secret Black Ops missions that few ever knew about. Each were given code names based on the specific feelings they carried into battle. For unbearable torment, the pain. The Hornet soldier was born at some point in the early 20th century, but little more is known about his origins up until the formation of the Cobra Unit. Most likely chosen for his imposing build and athleticism, which would have made him ideal for assaulting and overwhelming enemy positions, but he was known for a far more unique ability: the ability to control and weaponize Hornets. Some say he achieves this by carrying the Queen Hornet in his backpack, manipulating her humming to control the rest of the hive, but it was more likely thanks to a parasitic infection in his youth. The parasite allowed him to secrete specific pheromones that could not only help him control swarms of hornets, but also give him increased adrenaline, which managed the extreme pain he would go through. Hence his name. The pain also carried vials of this pheromone that he could lob at his targets and mark them for a coordinated stinging barrage. Over the years he was able to develop and breed his own kind of hornet within his own body, that he called bullet bees, as he was able to discharge them from his mouth at high speed. These hornets could burrow deep into the flesh of their targets and eat the victim from the inside out. The Cobra Unit was disbanded in 1947 due to disagreements within the Philosophers and tensions of the Cold War mounting, but in August 1964 they would return following the boss's defection to the Soviet Union. Working for Colonel Volgin, they successfully captured a rocket scientist by the name of Nikolai Stepanovich Sokolov in Selinoyarsk. It was here that the boss encountered her old protege, Snake, who was trying to extract Sokolov for the CIA. Less than a week later, Snake returned to assassinate the boss and eliminate Volgin at the behest of the Kremlin. Though the Pain was able to track and ambush Snake, he would fall in battle in a flooded cave. The microbomb that all members of the Cobra Unit were fitted with detonated upon his death, destroying his corpse and the hive within him. For absolute terror, the Fear. Also known as the Spider Soldier, for his use of deadly toxins and his uncanny ability to unhinge his joints to move around, he was named for the terror he relished in inflicting to his enemies. Very little is known about his time in the war, which may be a testament to his camouflaging abilities and superhuman agility. He carried a crossbow that he named the William Tell and a bowgun called Little Joe, both of which held bolts that were smeared in the venom of the Brazilian wandering spider. He set up traps in a small clearing near Granini Gorky and waited for his prey to come to him. As Snake crept into range, the Fear shot him with a bolt and taunted him as he described the agonizing effects of the venom. Nevertheless, Snake was able to treat the wound and defeat the Fear despite the odds being stacked against him. The Fear activated his microbomb, sending dozens of poison bolts flying in every direction. However, Snake was able to find cover and avoid them. For true oblivion, the end. Also known as the Ancient Sniper, or the father of modern sniping for the skills he developed over many, many decades in countless wars. It is believed he was born sometime in the 1860s, which would have put him over 100 years old at the time of Operation Snake Eater. Countless legends were shared about the old man. He could apparently communicate with the trees, and was even capable of photosynthesis, meaning he could go weeks without eating and allowing him to remain in position without moving a muscle, focusing only on his target. Though he was able to live longer than average, he felt that his time was coming, and would reserve his energy by being in a near comatose state so that he could enjoy one final battle. It was in the forest of Socravino in August 1964 that he would be granted his wish. The End joined up with the others just prior to the Virtuous mission, but spent most of his time sleeping and waiting. After the Fear was vanquished, the boss sent for the End to be placed in Socravino to lie in wait for Snake with his modified Mosin Nagant rifle. As Snake crept into the forest, the End was awoken and the hunt began. The End had passed some of his skills onto the boss, who then in turn passed them on to Snake, which he put to good use in their battle. Though the fight was long and drawn out, Snake was once again able to prove victorious. The End thanked Snake for a worthy battle, the leaves on his ghillie suit turning from green to autumn hues, and told him that the boss would be proud. His final words were, "I can return to the forest at last." With that, his microbomb detonated. For infinite rage, the Fury. A pyrotechnician during the war, the Fury felt a deep-seated hatred for everything and almost everyone he saw. When the war ended, he returned to his native Russia and entered the cosmonaut program, where he excelled and was chosen to be the first man in space, ahead of Yuri Gagarin. The mission was kept secret, however, because although the flight started well and the Fury was able to complete a full rotation of the Earth, his capsule malfunctioned upon re-entry and was engulfed in flames. It was here he could see a profound vision from his cockpit: the world in flames. He would survive the ordeal, but suffered severe burns all over his body. His pyromania and his hatred for the world was exacerbated tenfold. It was clear he was suffering PTSD as a result of the incident, although this most likely went untreated. He began building his own custom flamethrower, one that used a mixture of unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, chemicals that were used in rocket fuel and could burn for a long period of time. He wore a fireproof cosmonaut suit from then on to help him withstand the heat of his weapon, and even acquired a jetpack. The Fury was able to confront Snake in the corridors beneath Groznygrad on his way to the base. The dark tunnels were soon alight with the intense heat of their battle, but Snake was able to tear into the Fury's cosmonaut suit, making him vulnerable to his own fire. The Fury was then able to show another emotion in his final moments, lamenting the fact that the boss was now the last of the Cobras. He erupted into a ball of flames and removed his helmet before activating his jetpack and flying into the ceiling, setting his microbomb off, but even this wasn't enough to quell his anger. Snake witnessed the Fury's spirit manifest as faces wreathed in flames as it twisted around the columns of the tunnels in a blind rage before it caused a cave-in. With that, the Fury was no more. The endless grief, the sorrow. During the Second World War, the Sorrow was used in counter-espionage and was able to expose countless spies thanks to his supernatural psychic abilities. But it wasn't just the living he could gain insight into. He could also communicate with the dead. A native-born Russian, the Sorrow was recruited into the Cobra Unit and fought at the Battle of Stalingrad, where he would begin a relationship with the boss. They would bear a child, a son, and name him Adamska. Shortly after, the child would be taken by agents of the Philosophers. After the war ended and the unit disbanded, the Sorrow returned to the Soviet Union, working as an intelligence officer during the first few years of the Cold War. It was here that he was able to brainwash a CIA double agent and used him to feed the Americans false data readouts of one of the Sputnik models. The Sorrow was unaware that the agent had been placed by the boss herself. They wouldn't see each other again until 1962, when they were both sent on missions to eliminate one another by the Philosophers, who had threatened the safety of their child if they didn't comply. They met on a wooden bridge in Selinoyarsk but couldn't bring themselves to fight each other. They talked, discussing that they knew they couldn't return home alive with their child's life in the balance. Eventually, they agreed that the Sorrow should be the one to die. The boss would return and their child would eventually become a major in the Ocelot unit. The Sorrow's spirit would remain in the area and would see his old unit again 2 years later. He would also appear to Snake in a near-death experience, and it was there that the Sorrow was able to properly engage him. In the groves of Tycho Gorny, the Sorrow conjured the souls of all those Snake had ended so that he could hear their voices and feel the pain that he had caused. With that, he sent Snake back to the land of the living, but would appear to him again if he knew where to look. And for unsurpassed bliss, the joy. The group was led by living legend, a former SAS special advisor known as the Joy, though she would later go by the codename Boss. She was so revered by the rest of the unit that they would often refer to themselves as sons of the Boss. Born sometime in 1922, her father was one of the original members of the Wise Men's Committee. After he divulged some of the secrets of the organisation to her, he was eliminated and she was taken in to be raised by the committee that had now renamed themselves as the Philosophers. For a time, she was an instructor at one of the organisation's charm schools until 1941, when she was invited to the British Special Air Service as an advisor. There she met David O, and together they formed the 22nd SAS Regiment. She even planned and took part in raids during the North Africa campaign, and it was here that she began developing the basics of CQC, a form of unarmed combat. In 1943, she was tasked with infiltrating Los Alamos, where the Manhattan Project was taking place to develop and build the atomic bomb. Her task was to eliminate John von Neumann, who was believed to be a Nazi spy. Her mission was ultimately a failure as she was distracted, having found out just prior to the mission that she was pregnant. She narrowly escaped death, but had to be put into a medically induced coma to survive. The following year, still heavily pregnant, the boss took part in the Normandy invasions, along with the Cobras. She took out several V-2 rocket installations near Juno Beach. It was here that the boss took a bullet to the gut, and she went into labour, and they had to perform an emergency cesarean section to save the baby, which left her with a snake-shaped scar. In 1951, she witnessed an atomic blast during trial and testing, and became irradiated as a result and was rendered infertile. The year prior, she met a 15-year-old orphan known only as John. She took him under her wing, and together they developed and improved the technique of CQC. They spent nearly a decade together, forming a strong bond between them. But in 1959, the boss was sent on a top-secret mission to sabotage the Soviet space program, and the two were separated. They wouldn't speak to each other for another 5 years. She was also chosen for the Mercury project, part of NASA's mission to acquire data and see how the human body would react to space travel. The boss unofficially became the first American in space, ahead of Alan Shepard, and it was here she saw a stirring vision. The world as one. Upon re-entry, the very window for which she saw the Earth caused the vessel to veer off course and was thrown out of it as she touched down in the ocean. She somehow survived but was badly burned from radiation and the heat of re-entry, and was put into another coma for 6 months. When she woke up, her reputation was tarnished. The Kennedy administration covered up her disastrous spaceflight to save face following the Soviet successful mission. The Russian philosophers found out that the boss had placed a double agent within the space program back in 1959, and they refused to help her. In 1962, David O., now going by Major Zero, invited the boss to help him form a new unit within the CIA, the Fox Unit. It was 2 years following this that the boss was asked to provide support for her old apprentice John, who had since earned the codename Naked Snake. Thanks to a mole in contact with the boss, Fox knew that Sokolov was working on a secret nuclear weapon known as Shagohod that would drastically shift the balance of power in the Cold War. The Shagohod was a giant tank capable of launching a nuclear weapon anywhere on Earth, provided it had a runway of at least 3 miles in length. Snake's mission was to extract Sokolov and to impede the development of the Shagohod. Unbeknownst to everyone in the Fox unit, the boss had orders of her own. She had patiently worked her way into the trust of Colonel Volgin, who was currently in possession of the Philosopher's Legacy, a microfilm containing over $100 billion. The American wing of the Philosophers wanted the legacy for themselves, and they trusted none other than the boss to retrieve it. Volgin had previously floated the idea of defection to the boss, and with that she saw her opportunity. She was provided with 2 portable nuclear warheads and a Davy Crockett atomic battlegroup delivery system as a token to Volgin. As Snake led Sokolov to a wooden rope bridge in Dolino Vodno, the boss dropped radio contact and moved in to confront him. She was joined by Volgin and reunited with the Cobra Unit soon after they recaptured Sokolov. She was then ordered by Volgin to kill Snake by throwing him off the bridge into the river below, although Snake would survive the fall. As the Cobra Unit left the area, Volgin fired one of the portable warheads at Sokolov's facility, knowing that the Americans would take the blame. The incident almost led to a retaliatory strike by the Russians, but the Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, was assured by President Johnson that they could prove the Americans' innocence, and so the Philosopher's plan was greatly revised. The Philosophers concluded that the boss would have to die, and Snake would have to be the one to do it. This would also act as a diversion for the boss to acquire the microfilm containing the legacy and get it back into American hands. The boss accepted this, knowing full well what was going to happen. A few days later, Snake was sent back to Selinoyarsk under Operation Snake Eater. Shortly after he made touchdown, the boss was able to confront him yet again to discourage him from his mission, but in actuality was placing a transmitter on him so she could subtly aid him. As Snake progressed, the boss had to watch as each of her comrades fell in battle to her former protege. Following the death of Volgin and the destruction of the Shagohod, both at the hands of Snake, the boss took the Davy Crockett and the last remaining portable nuke and used it to destroy Volgin's fortress. She waited for Snake in a field of white flowers so that he could carry out the final part of his mission. They engaged in combat, using the CQC they had formed together, but Snake was now her equal and was able to gain the upper hand. She fell in battle, much like the rest of the Cobras, to her most beloved disciple. She handed over the microfilm of the Philosopher's Legacy as well as her weapon. Conflicted and reluctant, Snake used it to end her life. Her grave would be placed in Arlington National Cemetery, unmarked, save for the epitaph which read, "In memory of a patriot who saved the world." Following the events of Operation Snake Eater, the remains of 2 members of the Cobra Unit were retrieved and sent back to the United States for research by Code Talker, a Navajo scientist. He discovered that the vocal cords of the End and the Pain had parasites attached to them. The End's parasite gave the old marksman his unusual lifespan and sniping abilities. Notably, the End's cells were able to metabolize as long as they still had water and sunlight. This was how Code Talker was able to examine his remains years after his death. The assassin known as Quiet had been given a variant of this parasite as a result of therapy and could also photosynthesize. A strain of the End's parasites was also used to create an elite unit of superhuman soldiers in 1984 by XOF. The boss's own legacy lived on when the American branch of the Philosophers was reorganized and renamed to the Patriots in 1970 in order to fulfill her dream of a united world. Snake, later going by the title of Big Boss, was one of the founding members, but left in 1972 when he felt the boss's memory wasn't being honoured, and so he started his own private mercenary group known as Militaires Sans Frontières. He would later state that he died the moment he was forced to shoot the boss. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Here's to many more. I want to cover as much content of Metal Gear Solid 3 before the Delta release, so if you have any ideas for topics you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below. I'll also leave a link to my Patreon if you want to support me on there, to which I will greatly appreciate. Thanks again, and take care.